Hi, everyone. It's such a beautiful day here in Kentucky, and I am really excited to let you know some of the back end things behind Webinar Geek and how to participate today. We are going to have a recording of the webinar, certificate of attendance, and a survey, all available for you. The recording, like all of our other recordings, will be sent out in email within the next 5 hours. Just give us a little bit of time to process that, and it's going to come to the email with which you've registered. The survey will come up directly after the webinar. I promise you it will only take about 2 minutes to complete, and we use every word in that instrument to continue to grow and build this webinar program. You have got some amazing handouts coming your way today. There is a DEA conversation starters for elementary, middle, and high, all age appropriate handouts. And then we have some amazing resources from Generations United, the Grand Families Resource Help for Grand Families Impacted by Substance Use. That's a packet of information available for you. We have information on protective factors for youth and protective factors for adults. Here at Operation Parent in Kentucky, we are a nonprofit, and it's our mission to love and support parents by providing real-world information, connection, and most importantly, hope. We invite you to use our new quick registration for our upcoming webinars. You'll take just a moment to do that. You'll be able to register for both the Talk Early and Talk Often with MAD and Dr. Robert Teresi from Penn State, as well as Breaking the Silence, Minding Your Mind, a webinar on mental health for teens. Today's title is Helping Youth Heal, Support Through Family Addiction, Trauma, and Stress, with Trish Luna as our presenter. And I'm excited to tell you a little bit about her. Make sure you stay tuned till the end for our biggest giveaway ever as well. Trish Luna has dedicated her entire career to supporting children and families impacted by addiction and trauma. She has written Lambi Learns, a book about prevention, and this continues her life's work. She's been creating accessible, meaningful tools that foster healing and resilience. The Lambi program has been nationally recognized as a promising practice for prevention and early intervention, and I can promise you it's just that. Trish regularly presents, and she knows how to equip caregivers, educators, and frontline professionals with tools to better support children in crisis. And it's my pleasure for you to meet Trish and learn with her today.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Michelle. What an honor to be here with you guys at Operation Parent. You're doing amazing work, and I am just truly honored to be here with you and to share with everyone my story and to give
thrilled that you could do it. Thank you, Trish.
Well, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. It's wonderful to be with you here today. I'm actually in Nashville, Tennessee. That's the beauty of this new technology, that we can all come together and share from all different places. So I'm going to share with you about Lambi, which is designed exactly for all of you here today. It is something that my family needed, so it's written from my heart directly to you all. And it focuses on building emotional awareness, emotion regulation, resilience building, and most importantly, really having kids focus on that they're making early decisions. So the key takeaways today is helping kids recognize how chronic stress can show up in their bodies, to learn to understand what those emotions are and to feel them in their bodies. And then we're going to teach very simple ways to help them get their systems regulated again, to manage those big emotions. And then this is going to help you feel confident in your ability to help these kids get into a more regulated state. So this is Lambi, and I'm very happy to see you all, and I'm glad you're here. As we know, substance misuse affects everybody in the family. And I can speak from my own experience when my husband was struggling with substance abuse and went to inpatient treatment. While they had a little bit of a program for me as the wife, no one ever asked me about my children at home. So the children, in so many programs, in so many ways, are often overlooked as needing services. So my story starts back with my grandparents. Both of my grandparents were alcoholics. So both of my parents were adult children of alcoholics. So while I never had active addiction in my home, I learned all of the isms of the disease. So we have our first polling question. And I think Michelle was going to pop up in here.
Yes, ma'am. So we want you to think about what children remember most about growing up in a home affected by addiction. So we've got folks responding. So you're picking between specific events that happened, the people who tried to help, how the adults made them feel, or they don't remember much. It blurs all together. Votes are flying in, and we have over 170 responses for how the adults made them feel.
So that is what happens, is it's how we feel growing up. And the reality is we repeat what we don't repair. So when I met my husband, even though he was not in active addiction, when we met, everything about him spoke to the isms that I knew, the dysfunction that I had learned. So all of my insides were saying, this is it. This is normal. This is what I recognize. Joe was a helper. He was a fireman. He was a police officer. From the outside, we looked like we had it all. We had a beautiful family. We had a strong support. We went to church. We had a network of friends. And yet addiction was taking over our lives. And so something that I always say, and the reason I am so vocal about this now, is things don't always, they aren't as they appear. You might look like on the outside, you have everything going for you and there are no problems. And the other issue is it's sometimes hard to ask for help, especially when you do look like you have everything going for you. So in this picture, this was when things had gotten so bad in Florida. Joe was about to lose his job. We moved to Tennessee. That's known as the geographical fix. A lot of times people think they just need to move away from where the problem is and it will get better. And I can promise you that problems somehow get on that moving truck right along with your furniture. So even though Joe was suffering further and further consequences, like losing his job, losing our home, he eventually lost his rights to visitation with the children. This does not stop the disease. So we know that punitive measures are not necessarily what's going to change someone who's suffering from this disease of addiction. And now it's my daughter who is the one who's losing the rights to her children. It was a very dark day in October of 2020 when my daughter had just dropped my grandchildren off at school. And when, as she was leaving that day, she had a car accident, and that is what her car looked like. And when people, the first responders, came on the scene, they were saying, oh, did somebody already take, that body away? And my daughter somehow walked out of that car crash, but that was enough to push Maddie to go to her teacher and tell her what was happening in her home, which I wasn't even aware of. So this is what the multi-generational impact of substance misuse and ACEs look like. On the picture on the left, that was when my husband had come home from being at a treatment program for about 6 months, and the children were rushing into his arms, so happy to have their daddy home. And the next picture is my daughter after she had been in treatment and gone from her kids. And she'd been gone for 8 months. And I didn't really connect this myself, even though I'm living it, until I had those two pictures together. And you realize there is a multi-generational layer to this that we need to address to try to put a stop so we can help the next generation. So what are ACEs? I imagine most of you here today have heard that word before, but just to make sure, ACEs are adverse childhood experience. There was a famous Felitti study, and in that study, that was not originally set out to discover that substance misuse or alcoholism were the results, but it was actually an obesity study. And but they expanded that study and then found out that these were children who were exposed to childhood traumatic experiences. And these children were found to be 4 times more likely than others to develop this disease themselves. That's just an amazing, astounding statistic. And this new update in 2023 says that there's over 19 million children, or 1 in 4. So we're not alone. This is not an uncommon thing. So I'm so happy to be able to now be sharing more openly about this, and we can talk about it with a little more safety. So I've also included all of the questions that are on the ACEs test, and I leave it up here for just a moment so you can look through them. And I think I didn't take this until a couple of years ago, and we realized we may have a higher ACEs score even if we think we had a pretty good childhood or not a toxic or stressful childhood. But the thing that is incredible to me is to go from 0 ACEs to then 4 or more ACEs. If you look at, there's a 343% increase from 0 to 4 for illicit drug use. If you see the change in that, which is pretty astounding. But I always like to say here that we're not our ACEs score. So even if I know people who have an ACEs score of 10, who were completely high functioning and have worked through whatever their issues are. And I know people who have a 0 who could still use a little bit of work, but it's just something to be aware of. And I like to break it down as this is the allostatic load that children are carrying. And the best way to think about that, we all see kids put their backpacks on. And if we think of each of these stressful occurrences as a rock going into their backpack, 1 or 2 rocks, I mean, look, we should have some adversity. It builds our muscles. It helps us practice resilience. But after a while, if they're just picking up these rocks or toxic experiences without any help, either carrying the backpack or having some safe, trusted people taking out some of or relieving some of that load. That's why it's so important for all of us to become safe, trusted people so that we can help lighten this load of kids. So Dr. Robert Block says, and I couldn't agree more, that ACEs really are the single greatest unaddressed public health threat, that if we don't really understand what's happening with our kids, I have a dear friend, Eric Nation, who's the executive director of the National Alliance for Drug Endangered Children. We'll talk about them a little bit later. But he always says, our kids are 100% our future. That's it. So if we don't get a handle on helping them, it impacts all of us. So we'll just quickly go over the parts of the brain that are impacted by traumatic experiences and ACEs, stress. The nucleus accumbens, that's the pleasure reward. The amygdala is that fight or flight. When we all stay in that heightened state, other parts of our brain can't develop. And the HPA, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal, and the prefrontal cortex. All of these are so strongly impacted while a child is trying to also learn all their behavior skills and their counting and their numbers, their letters. So this is our next polling question.
So we'd like for you to put your answer in the chat. When a child is acting out or shutting down, what is your first thought about why that might be happening? Something is wrong, communication, overstimulated, something is upsetting, what's causing the behavior, questioning it, being upset, their fear or hurt, they're overstimulated, is coming in a lot, they're very overwhelmed. There's so many. They're tired, there's some sort of trauma, they're hungry. We need a snack every now and then too, don't we, Trish?
Yes.
They feel unsafe. They can't communicate their feelings. They're dysregulated. They need water. They're worried. They're disconnected. There's something on their mind that they can't figure out how to say. They have some sort of conflict. And how do I fix it?
I love that. I really love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah. So I love that you all seem super aware that this is not just a child wanting to be difficult. This is a form of communication. Trauma-informed care directly means that you understand that their behavior is a form of communication. So it's for us to decipher, what are they really communicating to me in this behavior? So we're going to go into recognizing the trauma responses, and that trauma is a mental injury. And I think we've all heard of fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. We're going to get into a little bit of discussing each one. And I always like to ask this, and we're not going to pop up a question, but do you all think that you know how to recognize each of these trauma responses or behavior communications? Can you think of some physical cues that you would recognize as these responses? Here's a list that show the the responses of dysregulation, the fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. And to me, the flight and freeze can be pretty similar in response, but something else that I always like to point out is, generally if you have a fighter, if you have a kid who has the aggression or becomes difficult to manage, that always seems like just a child who's misbehaving. And a fawn response, we all think, oh, isn't that just the sweetest child? Or they're just so compliant, they just give in all the time. But that's actually a really significant trauma response. And I have a granddaughter who is a fawner, who I say to her all the time, stand up for yourself, and your voice matters too. So this is a report that came out way too late for me when I was looking for resources or some understanding or some community around what my experiences were. But it just reiterates that these early experiences and the environmental influences leave this lasting signature. I get into a whole thing about, there's Dr. Dan Siegel, and he talks about the telomeres in the DNA, how once we start having these neural pathways getting disrupted, we have to change them neurologically to help them. But I knew back then, and I always like to say when this slide comes up, I would love a shout out for my then bangs in, I guess this was in the late 80s, early 90s, and we just did bangs then. So I knew that my kids were being exposed and were having traumatic experiences, but I didn't know where to get help. And when I did turn for help, rather than finding a community like these amazing people at Operation Parent, I just absolutely felt a withdrawal and almost, just complete judgment about our lives and what was happening to us. And there's a whole study about the circular impact of shame and trauma when it comes from a person experiencing that and how it impacts the family. But we now know, and we knew back then, one of my favorite people that ever lived, Fred Rogers, what is mentionable is manageable. So we have to start talking about this. So this is about ending the stigma, naming the feelings, opening communication. And back when I tried to get this book published, this is back when you would write it and send it up to New York and see if they wanted to publish something. And it was soundly rejected, saying it was just too taboo to talk about with kids. And I always say, even though there were books about pooping, that was okay, but not to talk about the childhood impact of familial addiction. So not talking about it doesn't make it go away. That doesn't make anything go away. And this was the last picture that my kids have with their dad. He lost his life to an overdose in 2009, shortly after that picture was taken. So Joe became part of these statistics that everybody throws around and talks about. 300 people a day. I always say, I used to be a flight attendant, and if we had an airplane of that many passengers dropping down from the sky, the whole world would stop to figure out what the problem is. But this is what's happening, and maybe we need to think about it in those terms and the ripple effect of what happens within a family when you lose that person. There's this billions of dollars in treatment costs and lost income and healthcare and all of those impacts, but there's a human toll. These are our loved ones, and I know what that feels like. So how do we help kids so they don't become the next number? And I hope all of you would have received in the email to listen to the Lambi story. And I think we have something later that has a QR code that can take you there. But the way we help is by reducing the stigma in situations like this. All of you joining today to learn about this, talking about this. How do we help foster nurturing relationships? And how do we create community solutions? How do we get everybody on board that this is how we have to be to help families to lift everybody up? So we don't judge the family, we acknowledge and label feelings, we become aware of the physical responses to toxic stress. So how does Lambi directly help? This is the link so that you can listen to the story. It's for free for everyone, anywhere, anytime, who needs to hear the words of the Lambi story. So if you hadn't had a chance to, please go back and listen, because all the rest of this will make a little bit more sense. But Lambi creates the safe space to have a conversation. It's about introducing this subject in a child-friendly way. And it helps us create these neuroprotective activities, which are called PACEs. And I know that our special guest, Beth Tyson, is going to be talking about those later. But this is here Dan Siegel talking about the telomeres, how we change the molecular health to prevent this inflammatory disease reaction, which causes the ACEs. So we're going to learn how to harness the power of the brain, just how it can be impacted by the ACEs in a negative way. We're going to learn how to impact it in a positive way to safeguard against the fallout of the ACEs. So the it's the emotional identification and expression. If we can get kids to name their emotions, this decreases that activity in the amygdala, and it strengthens the HPA and the prefrontal cortex. So here are the regulation tools that help, that are all incorporated into the Lambi story. Mindful breathing, which this is evidence-based to create a more regulated state within our bodies. Mindful walking, just slowing down a little bit, noticing things around you. Somatic experiencing. Lambi has the cool tools. We have some downloads, some free downloads. There's lots of free resources for us to share with you through the Lambi program. But in the Lambi book, we talk about all these different somatic experiencing, which help, again, regulate the nervous system. Echotherapy, you can even pretend to be outside. The brain doesn't know the difference if you're inside or outside. Positive imagery, just imagining. Lambi imagines there are beaches and mountains all covered in snow. Play is a very specific, creates very specific neurotransmitting, creates specific circuitry just in play. And you guys, I know I'm like kind of blasting through these, but you'll have this to where you can pause on the recording of this. And there's lots of information that you're going to have where you'll have it. So don't think you have to get it all. I feel like I'm talking very quickly and maybe losing some of you. But anchoring is a very important practice. And then grounding tools. This is so easy. You can do this anywhere, anytime, in the car, driving. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What you can see, feel, hear, smell, and taste. So we've got the cool tools, which is a download that you can do on the website. And here they are a little bit further explained. And I'll very quickly talk about each of the trauma responses and then which one of the somatic experiences might be the best to use in that situation. So for flight is to move out of anger by completing the stress response, and the deep breathing, the rainbow stretch, butterfly taps. For flight, what the most important thing is to move your body out of the urge to run or escape. So that's really getting it grounded, tapping your sides. That's the shake it up. Fawn is getting into a place of empowerment. So it really is, I make Maddie make her strong fists like this all the time. It just helps them feel, it's that physical feeling. When you're feeling, if you see a child in the freeze response, you can rub your hands over the part of the body that feels okay to receive that touch and connect. It's so important to resource all of you and then resource your kids, because that's the best prevention. And prevention is what Lambi is all about. We're going to talk about the risk. You're going to raise the awareness, understand that kids are making choices, and going to start with some goal setting. In the workbook, it goes over all of the core focus skills. That's the awareness, regulation, decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. So self-awareness is the physical feeling. Then self-regulation is the ability to disrupt and start some self-regulation through self-control. Decision-making, and so this, I love this quote, it's in our moments of decision that our destiny is shaped. And then relationship skills. This is so important in social awareness for all kids, but this is what shows personal growth. So again, I know that felt really fast for me. Hopefully you got all that information, but right now it is my pleasure to introduce to you and collaborate with Beth Tyson. She is a respected childhood trauma consultant, a former in-home trauma therapist for foster and kinship families. She is a children's book author and the founder of Beth Tyson Trauma Consulting. And Beth brings deep knowledge and heart and hands-on experience to her work with with trauma-informed tools and training to help kids heal. So here comes Beth.
Everybody. Wow, Trish, that was amazing. Thank you so much that you've taken such a painful life experience for both you and your children, and you've turned it into something that can help others. I mean,
Thank you so much.
That is just incredible.
Thank you. And I'm glad to be here with you, Beth.
Yeah, so grateful to be here with you. Thank you. Okay, so I'm here to share a little bit more about what communities, parents, and schools can do to help children who are coping with addiction in their families and other types of toxic stress. A little bit of information here, although Trish already gave me a beautiful introduction. I'm the author of 2 children's books that are designed for families who are coping with different types of loss and trauma. My first book is called A Grandfamily for Sullivan, and it is a story to help children who suddenly have to live with their grandparents due to unfortunate circumstances with their birth parents. So that could be addiction, mental health issues, incarceration, and even death. And this book really helps support families who are going through that experience. And then my newest book is called Sullivan Goes to See Mama. And it's a story to help children navigate the often overwhelming experience of attending a supervised visit, or what we are now calling supported family time. So I encourage you to check those out. But I'm also the co-chair of the Pennsylvania Child Abuse Prevention Team, as well as a CASA volunteer. That's a court-appointed special advocate for children in the foster care system. And I can't forget to mention that I am also a mom to 1 little girl and a very crazy dog. So dog lover and mom. Let's see. Let me see if I can do the next slide. There we go. Oops, did I miss one? Oh yeah. And there's the cover of the books and some of the reasons why the books are why they were created. And I needed these books as a therapist with children touched by the child welfare system. And they didn't exist. They weren't out there. And so I decided that it was time to represent these communities, because we have over 2.3 million grand families in the United States. And for anyone who doesn't know what a grand family is, it's when a relative or other what would you say, fictive kin. So it could be friends and family, or it could be like a grandparent or aunt or uncle who takes on the role of caregiver when children cannot be safe with their parents. And again, we have about 2.3 million of those families in this country alone. So I felt that it was necessary to represent them in the literature for children so that they don't feel so alone and so that they have some coping skills. Some things that we can do, and Trish touched on a lot of these things already, but it's backed up by research, everything here on this slide. And one of the things that helps to heal children impacted by trauma is building safe and predictable relationships. When trauma happens in a relationship, it needs to heal in a relationship. We can't heal relational trauma on our own. We can't heal relational trauma with AI. We need to heal trauma with relationships. And the more support a child has wrapped around them, the better the outcomes are for those who have experienced trauma. So providing a consistent relationship, a committed relationship, being emotionally attuned and in alignment with the child. So that means mirroring and reflecting their emotions when they're upset, when they're happy, when they're confused, when they're sad. And a presence in their life where they feel as though they belong to somebody. Without these elements, it's very, very unlikely or difficult for children to overcome trauma and to be able to regulate their nervous systems well enough to function at a high level, to learn and to move on with their lives. We also need adults who understand trauma-informed care, which is a lot of the work that Trish and I are doing. It's our mission to spread this knowledge to anyone who will listen to us and offer resources and guidance for free so that we don't have barriers to access to information that can really change the lives of children. We need to prioritize that understanding and development of their emotional literacy, which means what Trish said earlier about being able to name and identify and also talk about our emotions. Creating restorative and not punitive systems. Like she said, we don't stop using substances because we're punished. We stop using substances when we feel as though we belong and that we matter and that we have a purpose in the world. And bringing in to trauma-informed care is also critical that we honor people's culture, their identity, and their story, and that we're accepting of all human beings, regardless of how they choose to identify themselves or to what culture they belong to. And when children see their stories reflected in literature, in the community, and respected, it protects them from additional re-traumatization and the feeling of being invisible and isolated. So what can parents do? Parents really have a critical role, and caregivers, not just parents, but we also have grandparents, aunts and uncles, teachers, counselors, and all sorts of people who are influential in a child's life. And so one of the most critical things is being an honest and trustworthy human being for these children who have experienced trauma. Because what's broken when we experience trauma is our ability to feel safe and to trust others in the world and in the relationships around us. Not only that, but we also have a damaged sense of trust within ourselves. So we even have trouble trusting ourselves and our own thoughts and choices and decisions. And so when children are in proximity and in close relationship with trustworthy, honest adults, we can begin to rebuild that trust that's been damaged. And we can only do that by being honest and upfront with them about the hard topics in life, like Trish's books do and like my books do. We can't shy away from these hard topics because children will make up stories that that are probably worse than telling them the truth. And that's what we see over and over again. We need parents who can understand trauma-informed parenting skills, which is a lot of what I teach in my books and in my webinars and trainings. We also can take care of our own selves and be in touch with our own childhood trauma that might be unprocessed. And I know there's a lot of folks out there walking around and not even realizing how their childhood is now impacting their ability to care for the children around them. So journaling and thinking about what your childhood was like and trying to sort of connect the dots there about why maybe a child's behavior is so activating or triggering for you. You know, does that behavior in the child tie back to something that was denied in you as a child? And then there's grace for their mistakes. You know, nobody's perfect, and even ourselves, right? Even adults are not perfect, and we mess up and we make mistakes. So owning our mistakes, repairing the relationship when we do make mistakes is really critical in building that trust and helping kids feel safe. And then embracing, again, that cultural traditions. If you're raising a child who's not from the same culture as yours, or if you're teaching or caring for a child who has different belief system, you know, embracing their beliefs and participating in activities and getting to know what their culture is can really help them develop a sense of identity and will ground them in their mental health. Schools can also make a big difference in how a child is working through and coping with their trauma. Something as simple as greeting a student by their chosen name. So instead of assuming they want to be called, you know, their full name, you know, asking them, how do you like to represent yourself. What is the name you would like me to call you? Or giving fist bumps instead of, hugs, or offering high fives, or offering kids to even skip that sort of affection if they're not feeling up to it. Offering professional development on attachment and regulation and co-regulation, and how teachers and administrators and all of the professionals that serve children in schools really need to understand the importance of rebuilding trust and attachment, and how they can help regulate the child's emotions with their own bodies. Having those charts for understanding feelings in classrooms, fewer punitive measures like suspensions and detentions, and more finding out like what's beneath that behavior, what's going on, is there problems at home that are causing it, giving children the benefit of the doubt, and offering them some support instead of jumping right to, oh, this is just a troubled kid. Well, kids are doing the best they can. I really believe that. And when we offer punishment instead of support, we just add more trauma onto the trauma. Offering books and cultural activities, inclusion of identities and family voices in decision-making can all help children heal and prevent additional trauma. And communities are also a place where children can find support. And we need leaders and people that can look after our children out in the community, who are not judging them based on the way they look or on the way they behave, but thinking deeper, getting under the hood to see what's really going on, instead of just assuming that we know all the answers, and being curious about behavior instead of making judgments. Offering parenting classes, mental health first aid, and different types of ongoing education in the community can really help spread the word about trauma-informed parenting. Teaching folks how to communicate. I mean, it sounds simple, but it's really not. It's really much more nuanced than people realize. And we aren't always taught how to communicate in a healthy manner. And we end up repeating the cycles from what we experienced as children. And that isn't always the healthiest model, as we know. That trauma gets passed down through learned behavior from past generations. And we need to question whether what we experienced as a child and the way we were parented is really the most beneficial way to move forward, or maybe there are things that we could tweak to be more supportive. And again, honoring and being inclusive of people's sense of identity, their beliefs, and helping people feel like they belong. We're really losing that sense of belonging, and that in and of itself can feel traumatic for so many people. So finding ways to rebuild trust as well as belonging are some things that parents, caregivers, communities, and schools can all focus on in order to help children heal. I think Trish is going to join me for this slide, but we've like to share a couple of national organizations that offer a ton of free resources for all of you, and really some places for you to get more involved if today has sparked some inspiration in you. Trish?
So thank you so much, Beth. That was so helpful and so engaging, and I just appreciate everything you shared. So I just want to, I can't say enough about the National Alliance for Drug and Danger Children. They exist to help all of us. This organization is dedicated to supporting professionals and communities to address the impact of substance misuse on the whole family. They've been around for 30 years. They train and support multidisciplinary teams. They offer online and technical resources and tools. They help develop DEC alliances within communities, and they provide education to help professionals, communities, and families. And they have a conference upcoming in May in Las Vegas. And then Generation O, this is a new organization that I just got to learn about. Michelle and I were talking about how important it is to go to these conferences and we learn about each other. But they use the term Generation O to describe the generation of children born with prenatal opioid exposure. And they support parents and caregivers through their education, resources, and community.
I just had the opportunity to attend the Generations United conference. That was one of the things that Beth introduced me to, and it happened to be right here in our hometown, Louisville, Kentucky. And I really want to make sure you don't miss the opportunity to go to their website and check out all the resources for families and lean on the professional staff in that organization if you're a kinship family or a grand family, because they are the most caring professionals, and there's just a lot of resources for those of you that work in the field, or if you are a grand family or a kinship family.
Thank you, Michelle. And I'll give one shout out to Paces Connection. They've been invaluable to me as a professional in the field. So if we have professionals here who want to find a community to connect with, as well as caregivers and others, you don't have to be a professional, but as a professional, they've been very supportive of coming together as a team to tackle trauma and helping people understand ACEs and positive childhood experiences. So check them out as well. If anyone would like to stay in touch with me, I would love to continue learning about you and getting to know more about you, and also sharing my free resources. So although my books are on Amazon and they're unfortunately not free resources, I would give them away for free if I could, truly. But you can find lots of other resources at bethtyson.com, especially on my blog. Each month I publish a childhood trauma newsletter, and inside there is chock full of free guidance and resources, videos, all sorts of things to support children and families who are impacted by trauma and ACEs. You can also find me on LinkedIn, where I'm incredibly active. I post there every couple of days, have about 63,000 followers. And of course, on my YouTube, you can find more free webinars. And you can just probably search for Beth Tyson trauma and they'll pop up. So lots of free options there. But of course, the books are also there as an additional resource for classrooms, for counselors, social workers, CASA volunteers, anybody who touches the life of a child impacted by the child welfare system or kinship care.
So we're just waiting for the day when Beth gets her top voice acknowledgement on LinkedIn. She is that already. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it out into the universe, and you know that we'll be celebrating when she gets that acknowledgement.
Thank you.
Officially.
Thank you.
She already has it, but
thank you.
So I think there's going to be a pop-up for a survey that we do. I work, as I said, with the National Alliance for Drug Endangered Children. We're always looking to collect data to see what's helpful. What have you learned? What do you want to hear more about? So there's a pop-up. And if you complete the survey, we have some extra deluxe free download regulation tools for you. There is a free app. The app has the story on there. We have cool tools that we're adding as we create them to follow. There's also some games you can play, Words with Lambi and also tic-tac-toe. But then there are some resources that you can get with it's the Lambi Deluxe set, which has our sweet little Lambi in there and the book. And so thank you so much. Yeah, please fill out the survey and we'll send you some wonderful downloads, and you can check out the website. We just continue to add and grow. We just completed, which isn't even on there yet, it's a little baby book. It's for 0 to 3. Well, it's not. My camera doesn't want to show you that, which has a little baby Lambi and a teether. So this is that 0 to 3. Those families who are dealing with that. Oh, it's time for the giveaway.
It's time. So go ahead and enter the pop-up. We're super excited for 9 winners to receive. 6 of you will receive a bundle. So you'll get one of each of our resources. And then 3 of you will get the flip book as well as the deluxe Lambi set.
Right.
And I can tell you, you've started to learn about these books and Trisha's tools, but they're even more adorable than they look, and what you've heard about them. They're so useful for young ones that are in the throes of addiction, and to actually have some resources right in front of them that they can identify with and be supported. It makes me so excited to think about that wraparound support. So now's a perfect chance to submit your questions for Beth and Trish. So do not hesitate for that. And I'm going to tell you a couple things about, well, Trisha's going to mention one thing about our handbooks, and then I'll tell you a few more things about Operation Parent.
So I was so blessed to meet Michelle as I was at another conference. And once I learned about this parent handbook, this incredible resource, it is just a must-have for any caregiver. It's also in Spanish. And I just wish I had this resource for my kids.
Thank you, Trish, so much. We do firmly believe that it is a life-saving resource. And we cover topics in the elementary handbook, such as technology, substance use, and mental health. They're absolutely perfect for caregivers, parents, foster parents, and grandparents. And it just keeps you up on what's actually happening out happening today. It gives caregivers practical conversation starters, action items, and the updated facts on all of these topics. It's a very affordable resource. We hope that you will grab one for yourself today, perhaps for someone that you know, as we know we need to surround our children with a tribe of folks that are aware of what's happening out there. Or perhaps you could get a sample. If you already have one, maybe grab a sample and share it with an organization that you're involved in. We would be so honored if you would consider that. And TNT is another wonderful product that we've developed for 5th to 9th grade. It's a high energy event with the purpose of teaching evidence-based drug facts. And we're equipping students, most importantly, with refusal skills, so they know how to say no. We hope that you'll join us on our social media channels. It's another great avenue to share prevention information with your communities. We're at Operation Parent on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So please join us in all those places. If you didn't get a chance to be with us in the beginning and you're here now, here's your opportunity to register for our upcoming webinars. This new quick registration will allow you to do that in just a couple of minutes. Okay, we are ready for the questions. Let's see here. Trish, would you like to start by talking about how do we even start to talk to children about their parents' addiction?
So I get this question all the time, and it was actually, I had the same question myself. And it really is about starting the conversation gently, answering direct questions when a kid asks you. I used to say, I never wanted to say like, oh, mommy is sick or daddy is sick, because then if you ever got a cold or something, it could really strike some fear into the child. So it's really important to also have kids understand it's not their fault and they're not alone. So it's very simple, direct language explaining that addiction is a disease. And there are lots of ways with lots of resources that I felt like reading to my child was what my best way to deliver information.
That's perfect. Do either of you have a recommendation on curriculum and other resources to educate parents, communities, and schools on the trauma-informed care? Are there some other things that you've come across that you like?
Yes. So SAMHSA has a free training on their website, and we can put that maybe in the chat. I can copy and paste it. And also, there are lots of trainings that come up, and it's something that I've been working on with several other organizations, creating curriculums for individual nonprofits. But there are several different places that you can go online, and that's the first one that comes to mind. Hold on one second. You guys can go to the next question while I find the link.
Okay. I just saw something really cute in the chat. There's one of our audience members. It's their birthday, so they really hope to win the giveaways.
I love
I
that.
hope so too.
Do our best. I think you put it out in the universe. So, okay, the next question is resources for explaining why you're living with grandma to a young autistic child.
So, not to plug my book, but my book is very much suited for young children or children with developmental delays, ages 3 to 8. It's called A Grand Family for Sullivan, and explains in very trauma-informed and age-appropriate terms why a child has to live with their grandparents. It's a very simple explanation, so I think that any child, even if they are on the spectrum, would at least begin to understand why and at least hear the words and have them introduced. And then over time, they'll gain more and more awareness. But books like Trish were something I always turn to when my daughter is coming up to a new stage or transition or something I don't know how to handle, like body safety conversations in the early days. I felt very uncomfortable having that conversation. So I used books to gain confidence and to learn the right way to talk in age-appropriate terms for kids. And I think the books that Trish and I wrote are just as much for the children as they are for the adults to gain that confidence and learn how to speak in trauma-informed language.
That's amazing. Trish, this one is for you. We have an audience member that's a child of an alcoholic. It was never talked about in the 90s, and my mom was also a victim of the big pharma push with Oxycontin. She is no longer with us, but I totally wish I had had Lambi growing up. It would have helped me so much to understand why my mom couldn't care for me like other moms could for their children.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. I know just how you feel, and that's what's in the Lambi book that says Lambi knows exactly how you feel, because that's what my kids went through. And even my granddaughters, they don't have their mother. They're not able to have a relationship with her. And it's very hard. They're 12 and 13 now. She's been gone for almost 5 years. And it's very hard to explain to them what's keeping their mother from being able to mother them the way they see other moms doing it. So I will tell you this, I go to Al-Anon. I would say if there's any way to be in an Al-Anon group or find community somewhere, whether it's in your faith organization, just to not feel alone can lift that burden incredibly. So I just find for me that has been invaluable, and I'm sorry for what you went through.
How can I help a parent that wants to help but keeps getting in her own way?
That's a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is tough. I think helping them understand what led them there and continuing to focus on how their own, and instead of them feeling blamed for how they are now, helping them see the connection to their past can be really powerful. And that taking away some of that shame and that stigma can shake things loose in a way that other things can't. But that is a really hard question. So Trish, I'll see if you have any insight.
Yeah, no, I mean, I lived through that, and we went through multiple treatment programs. I mean, you just try to keep showing up, and you understand at a certain point choices no longer are the choices that we view as an easy choice to make. So it's love and patience, and again, finding support for yourself, because we have no control over anyone or anything outside of our hula hoop. And sometimes that's, the most important thing to remember.
This question is for both of you. How can I help this child feel safe when their whole world has just turned upside down?
Trish, I'll let you go and I'll follow up.
Sure. So one of the reasons that I created the extension of the book in the Lambi plush coming to life is because that's something that stays with a child. We know kids can feel a sense of safety from a stuffed animal. And I thought it was really critical for a child to be able to relate directly to having that character come to life for them. And it's just proven neurologically that sometimes kids can't handle physical touch. So this also can be that little bit of a step in between. It's something that they can hold themselves to get comfort and to cuddle. And then eventually they could tolerate some external physical touch. But that's just something that always stays with them. And then as we as the adult can show up as regulated as we can possibly be to co-regulate with them. And it's just having to have them know that even though times are hard, they are going to be okay. And it's a brutal place to be, but that's the best and that we can do for them at that moment. Beth, what do you think?
I think a lot of times as parents or caregivers, we tend to, when we see a child who's distressed or experiencing overwhelm, we want it to stop, right? It activates our own stuff so much and we feel so bad and we are so fearful of what it means for their future that we almost or often do shut it down with distractions, with, oh, you're fine, you're okay, stop crying. Big girls don't cry, big boys don't cry. We go right to shutdown mode. And instead, in order to feel safe, the children really need someone who can turn into those feelings with them and walk beside them through it. So even though you don't have the answers, even though things are really uncertain right now, even though I know you're terrified of what you've just been through, I don't have all the answers, but I know I can see how much you're hurting, and I'm going to walk with you through it. You're not alone. And what happened is not your fault. And just knowing that they have at least one person, the research by Harvard University on the study of one caring adult, and you can look this up just by searching that phrase. It shows that children who have just one committed, loving adult in their lives can overcome, adversity and trauma and ACEs. And so I encourage you all to be that one adult for any child that needs you, and be consistent and be that honest person, be that person who can not run away from their feelings, but turn in with them and walk them through it so that they're not alone.
Yep. That's amazing. We have a grandparent on the call with us, and she's been raising two grandkids since they were 2 and 4, and now they're 11 and 13. I really need help. There's a lot of trauma. What advice might you have for her?
I mean, it's a lot of what we shared already. I think it's, again, helping them feel safe in their body. A lot of the strategies that Trish went through in the presentation, I encourage you to go back and look at some of those grounding activities, some of those body activities, but it's really in the relationship is really what is most powerful. And research shows us that time and time again, that the quality and the consistency of the relationship that you build with the child is what's most beneficial for healing from trauma. And so you don't have to be perfect at it. That's the other thing that we often think as parents, especially myself, is that we're not going to be perfect at this. We are going to make mistakes. We are going to yell. We are going to lose our temper. We are going to say the wrong things, do the wrong things. That's called being human. You know, being a parent or being a caregiver is going to push your buttons. It's going to bring up old pain. But I think what we have to remember is that instead of just breezing over it and forgetting about what happened, is going back to repair the damage that might have been done or the mistake that was made, and owning it and saying, I really don't like how I acted earlier. I'm deeply sorry for that behavior. I'm going to work on that. I need to go to therapy. I need to talk to a friend. I need to, do more of my own coping skills, but I messed up and I'm sorry. And I'm going to do better next time.
Beth, you've made a perfect segue, and I'm interested to hear what you both think about this. I mean, it's perfect. There's a parent in the audience that's being very honest about going through her own trauma and holding on to that, and when she gets upset with the kids, yelling at them, getting stuck in the shame cycle after yelling, and feeling guilty for traumatizing children further. And so what you were saying there really, really folds into that. She wants both of them to heal and break the cycles. So, her kiddo, when he hears no, it's super hard, and he gets dysregulated and emotional really easily. So it brings up triggers for the mom too.
Yeah. So, and hearing no can feel, so children who have experienced trauma can feel, by hearing the words no, can feel loss of control. And control equals safety to our nervous systems. And so that's why we see a lot of defiant behavior or a lot of oppositional behavior with children who have experienced trauma, is because that need for control is actually a survival mechanism.
Right.
So even though it may seem ridiculous to us as adults as to why this child is saying no right now, and I can say that because I've been there, like, oh my gosh, why is she fighting with me over this is so stupid. It's never about the thing. Often it's about a feeling of losing control. So that's why parenting experts harp so much on giving children options, and options that you are also okay with. So I've had to do this a lot with my daughter, where I say, okay, do you want to take your shower now or in a half an hour from now? Or do you want to take it in the morning or at night? And I know that we've probably all heard that advice before, but the reason for that advice is not just to be accommodating or compromising, but it's because it helps the child feel as though they have a little bit of control in a world where they have almost none. And that lack of control feels like a threat to their survival. It's not just them being non-compliant. It feels like life or death to them. And so they will grasp and cling to any type of control that they can find. And so one of the strategies is offering options that you are okay with, to give them that sense of having some control wherever it's safe and age appropriate.
It's great advice. What age groups do you recommend your books for? Both of you, each of your books?
I say 3 to 12, and now we have the new 0 to 3, the baby Lambi, but and 12, that may seem like a larger span, but a lot of times kids who have been misplaced within, or removed from the home, or don't necessarily have the straightest trajectory in their school and education. And so we didn't want anybody to feel as if this was a baby book that they were getting. And I will say 5th grade, which is the 11, 12-year-old, they are so happy to have language and words to what they've been feeling. Like you see people saying, I wish I had this when I was a kid. So these 10, 11, 12-year-olds who haven't had anything before, this is sometimes the first time they're getting to see it expressed. So
yeah, I love that. That's a really great point. I'd say my books are typically for 3 to 8-year-olds, but like you said, a lot of times these populations have been so isolated and not spoken about and not heard that I've had adults who feel so seen by
yes.
a grand family for Sullivan, because they're like, yes, how did you know? That's exactly how it felt. And that's exactly what I went through. And all of my stories are based off of composite experiences from real life stories of families going through this. And so feeling seen through someone else's story, like you said earlier, is the power
Very
of that.
powerful. Yeah.
Power of that is immeasurable. So,
and Michelle, I don't know if I wanted to add to what Beth had shared about those other questions. I just want to encourage all of you who are here. You're doing a great job. The fact that you're here trying to learn says volumes, and we're not going to get it right. As Beth said, we're human, we're imperfect, but you're trying, you're finding the words, you're finding your own way. Healing is a continual process for all of us. I mean, I'm still healing from things, and it's about the awareness and the willingness to have these conversations. So just pat yourself on the back and really know that that's the most important thing. You're showing up. So remind yourself of that. You showed up, and you're doing a great job, and it's going to be okay.
I think there's a book too. I think it's Dan Siegel, and it's called The Power of Showing Up. I forget his co-author's name, the woman that he writes all his books with, but it's called The Power of Showing Up. And I think that might be helpful for some folks here. So I just wanted to mention it.
Yeah, it just makes me so happy to think about schools in the next school year using these resources, school counselors in their office connecting with kids with these resources. And I can envision the books being read and a school counselor really valuing the flip book that's in your toolkit, Trish, because we can't afford to buy a resource for every single person, but that flip book is dry erase, so they can use it over and over. And one thing you guys are teaching me today is kids are at all different places emotionally. And if they're not ready to talk about the specific thing, they might sit with you and work through some activities in the flip book.
That's right.
To start to build that relationship. One question that we have, I want to recognize Amanda, who's been a part of our team, and she designed the handouts and the slides. And we've had that question a lot in the chat today, is like, can I get the handouts? Where can I get the handouts? And so I wanted the audience to know, absolutely, you have them in your email. So if you just go back to the email reminding you about the time we were meeting up today, there's an orange button on there. If you tap on that for handouts, you'll be able to download all of the suggested resource handouts that have age-appropriate ways to talk to kids about substance use. And then also, most of you were asking to have a copy of the slides today so that you can further think about this topic and the resources. So just go to that past email, click on the orange button. You can download all the handouts and continue to study this issue. And like Beth and Trish both said, just show up and do what you can. We're all here to make a difference and to help kiddos. Let's see. I'll get one more question for the good of the cause, and then we'll wrap it up from there. So if you all have any closing thoughts after okay, how can young adults and youth help parents communicate to them instead of shutting them out? So
this is Is this question asking how the kids can get the parents to not shut them out? Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
that's how I read that. And it's a tough question, but I think whether you're a parent, grandparent, or kinship family, we see our teens go in and out of shutting down. And so, what's a way to keep those relationships open?
Mm-hmm. I need to think about that one for a second. I'm so used to thinking about it from the other, perspective, because
And we completely shifted gears there. So
yeah, I mean, I guess I don't think it's the child's responsibility, to have to be the one reaching out to their parent, although I know that so many find themselves in that circumstance. I think it's about trying not to be judgmental towards their parents and having an open mind, starting with a non-blaming, stance so that they are not feeling defensive, kind of all the things that an adult would do to try and communicate with a youth or a young adult, but just flipped around. But I don't typically give that, because to me, it should always be the reverse, right? It should always be the parent or the caregiver who's trying to figure out how to connect with their children. So,
right. I think it's I'm seeing this as young adults and youth. So at a certain point, if I'm thinking about like a teenager, older, 14, 15, 16, and how can they help the parents to be able to communicate? I think it's really if they come with honesty about how they're feeling and explain, if you want me to be able to share with you, I'm going to need a safe place to be able to share that information. So to me, it sounds a little bit like boundary setting, or saying I want to be able to be open with you rather than shutting it out. So trying to tell a kid that, I think it's the adult who has to say, hey, I'm going to be a safe place for you to share that information. So we sort of show up in that way and show them consistently that they can share hard, difficult things with us without, creating, a strong negative judgmental reaction out of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's tough.
Yeah. I mean, I always take the going first, right? People say we have to be the ones to go first, the teachers, the caregivers. And I believe that. But in this circumstance, it can also help if a parent is shutting a child out, or a young adult. Maybe there's some repair that needs to take place in that relationship. And owning up to our own mistakes as young adults, or, challenges, shortcomings, could be a way maybe to open the door to a deeper conversation.
yeah. I think addiction, it's so hard on the family. And if there's been all the extra stresses and things, the relationships are maybe strained too. But just continuing to remind a young adult about their future, how important it is, like just not saying, not giving up, or not just reminding them constantly, like, this is where the prize is, keep moving forward. And things that happened in your family in the past, you don't have to repeat that. It's not, it's up to you what you want your future to be, and just keep painting that picture of how important the future is, and how much the world needs them, and just keep moving forward.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for everything. We just want to remind everyone in the audience that you've got this. If you're a parent, a foster parent, a caregiver, a kinship family, and Operation Parent, Trish Luna, Beth Tyson, we've got you too. We're here to help where you need us. And thank you so much for giving us your most valuable resource today, your time. And it really has been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. And I forgot to mention it earlier, but if people want to continue learning and doing a deeper dive into how to help families heal, I'm hosting a 3-hour workshop on July 23rd. And I think you'll find the link in the follow-up email. So keep an eye out. keep an
Yep.
eye out for that follow-up email. There'll be links to lots of resources there.
Yeah, we'll get it there. For those of you that want to take a deeper dive with Beth, you'll have that. You'll have links to Trisha's resources as well. So thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks so much.